All right, Erica, and we're live.
All
Hello,
right.
everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. This is the first ERG resource series in 2023. So I get to say Happy New Year, everyone. My name is Lola Adeyemo. My organization is called EQImindset. And as an ERG expert, I work specifically with employee resource groups, companies that want to start them and how to optimize existing ERGs. And I do it in a couple of ways. One of those ways is to put together this series called the ERG Resource Series. A lot of questions around ERG metrics, ERG tech. The DEI tech space itself is really new, really young. And so I wanted to give an opportunity to get to meet the people behind some of the tools that are making a huge difference for organizations right now. And so, MATHISON is one of such tools. I recently got connected because I saw a post about a summit and then I attended a summit and then I came back for another summit because there were two versions. And Erica and I got to connect. And I know that the MATHISON platform had a couple of things that really got me excited about the future of DEI metrics and tech. So I'm glad she took the time out to chat with me today. Hi, Erica.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. So let's dive right in. Do you want to introduce yourself, Erica, your journey so far, and then we'll go into Matheson?
Yeah, absolutely. So, my name is Erica Robichaux. My pronouns are she, her. My early business career started in the business space in consulting, entrepreneurship, a lot of sales and marketing that goes along with new business openings, things like that. Um, about 5 or 6 years ago, I became really fascinated at how to use design to make better business. And when I say design, I don't really mean visual design, but more how to design systems and processes in such a way that it helps a business to be more profitable and to achieve their goals. So I then got into the wonderful world of user experience. I have a master's degree from Bentley in human factors and information design, which is a little more like sciencey, nerdy version of UX, I would guess. And from the very beginning, one of my big focuses in UX was diversity and inclusion within building and designing systems, and how can we start to decrease that gap in opportunity and all of that for underrepresented populations by designing in a more equitable and fair and inclusive and diverse way. So I was a UX strategist for a while, really focusing specifically on that piece of it, and just leaned more and more and more into that space until I fell all the way into DEI. And so here I am now.
I think I love to ask this story because the way everybody falls into DEI is just always different. I told somebody a few years ago that there's nobody really goes to school and say, I want to get a degree in DEI.
Right.
Everybody found a path into these somehow, and it's always fascinating to hear. So thank you for the work you do.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I guess I forgot to mention, although we'll talk a lot about it during this call, that I now work for a company called MATHISON.io. Um, the second I found out about Matheson, I was hooked. I looked into it, and it was the perfect combination of business and tech and research and numbers and all of the nerdy things that I love. And of course, it is a DEI focused platform that is designed to help businesses to create these equitable systems. So it was literally everything I loved in one single place. And I was hooked. So I literally found them on LinkedIn. I messaged them and said, I want to work for your company. And here I am.
All right. LinkedIn works.
LinkedIn works.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, thanks for sharing that. And that really comes across in the work you do. Again, one of the things I was like, I didn't even know exactly what you did at Matheson. The first time we talked, I remember just knowing, okay, she gets this, and she's passionate about these, and then she's taking steps to build her career around what she loves. So it's always interesting to see how our career paths bring us to all of our passions together for the
Right.
perfect role, right?
I am a big believer in energy, and I think that the universe just brings you the right thing at the right time. And it was like all of the things, at one time, and I said, "This is it." Never looked back.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. So there's a motivation. There's a lot of motivation in there for people because you get the question a lot. How do I get into DEI? I want to
Yeah.
move into DEI. And a lot of times when you peel back the layers, the people asking these questions are already doing it. And they've
Right.
already done a lot of stuff. But it's just, we look at DEI role as the space that I want to get into. There's
Right.
very few, very limited roles in actual DEI teams. But there's a lot of opportunity for people to bring their DEI passion and into play in their various areas of expertise. So this is all
Yeah,
career
absolutely.
development part.
And I think that the space is growing so quickly. I think that there's going to be more and more of these opportunities that pop up for people. But you're absolutely right. I mean, if you look at my story, I came from business and design, which is not, what people traditionally think of as DEI, right? They think of HR, or they think of talent acquisition or people operations, or things like that. And now I call myself a DEI strategist, or maybe a DEI architect, because I really am still super passionate about creating that strategy or that journey, whether it's UX, or whether it's using UX to, or whether it's using, now you don't even need UX to create that journey, because our DEI tech just does it for you and creates the journey for you,
So
which
that's
is
a
so
nice
cool.
segue.
Right.
Yeah, perfect segue to talk about the tool. Because if you hear all about what Erica is passionate about, what she's done, and then now she's at Matheson. So, what drew you to Matheson? Tell us a little bit about Matheson and start with the name, because that was a pretty cool story.
Yeah, yeah. So the name Matheson actually comes from the middle name of Alan Turing, which most people, I didn't know before I read the story linked to our company, and it really just is a great example of what we are trying to do. So probably most people who are listening are familiar with Alan Turing, at least in some way, but now we credit him with helping to win World War II. Um, of course, he broke the Enigma machine code to help with that. A lot of his papers that he wrote, people consider them the foundation for the modern computer, which is literally everything we're talking about right now. He just did so much for the world. And he actually was gay. And when the British government started looking into him for possible spy activity, they actually discovered that he was gay. At the time in Britain, that was illegal, it was against the law. He had two choices. He could go to prison, or he could take a horrible drug to chemically castrate him, which made him essentially go crazy and kill himself. So if you think of that story, I mean, he died, I want to say he was in his 40s when he died. And if you think if he could have lived even 10 more years, or 20 more years, or 30 more years, what else could he have done? And what else could he have given to not just his country, but the human race? Because we're all still benefiting literally every day from him. So it's just a really poignant story about why it's so important not just to include everyone, but to really make everyone welcome and feel a sense of belonging and inclusion, because you never know, right? Not just for the benefit of the company, but it's just, you never know.
You never know, right? Is to create those spaces for people to be who they are
Exactly.
and evolve to who they want to be, right?
Right.
Because there's probably was so much more that it could have given, developed or added to the space. So
Right.
thank you.
So that's where the name came from, which you can probably tell I always get like a little bit emotional about, just because I think it's such an amazing story and such an amazing thing to keep in mind when you're in this work. It's really motivating to think of that story and why what we do is so important. So Matheson as a platform, we are an end-to-end DEI operating system. And so what that means for you is that it takes everything that you need to create a customized DEI strategy and puts it all in one place. And when I talk about DEI strategy, a lot of companies will focus their DEI in one maybe part of the company. So whether that's talent acquisition, they're trying to bring in diverse talent, or whether that's HR and what kind of benefits or. But really, if you think of DEI, it starts before someone ever even thinks of working for your company. It starts with what they're hearing in the news, what kind of marketing campaigns you have, what is their perception of your company. That's what's going to initially attract talent, right, to then apply for your company. And then you need equitable systems in the hiring process, in the interview process, in the onboarding process. But then it can't just stop there, because then you need equitable systems for pay equity, for advancement, for all of these different things. You need ERGs to make people feel a sense of belonging within your company. You need all of these different parts to really have a end-to-end DEI strategy. So what our platform is designed to do is to help you break down not just those numbers, right? Not just, okay, we have 50% women in leadership, so we're doing great, but what does an actual end-to-end DEI strategy look like? And what are all those individual pieces and drivers that build all the way up to a successful strategy from that first time that someone's hearing about your company till their last day at your company?
Right, right. And what you're describing is huge, because that's what a lot of companies, even the companies that are doing it well, it takes time to do that, which is the
Right,
point of what we're saying, is that even for those that have great intentions, this is gathering a lot of data, starting with one section or one area to do the analysis and assessment of
right.
where we should focus on first. This is not even doing the work. This is trying to figure
Absolutely.
out what
Yeah,
is going on, right? So being able to do all of that quickly, easily, with more
right.
metrics accessible, like that's the description of what you're talking about when you say end to end. And I
Yeah,
think that's powerful, because a lot of companies, that doesn't happen. Is you bring a speaker in to do one, come speak, or bring a trainer in, or this one off attempts to do stuff. What
right.
is it really addressing? How can you show that that one-off attempt was a bigger part of something, that
Yeah.
can make a difference across the organization?
And I think that's what's so exciting about DEI tech right now and the emergence of this field is you are able to really start to take all of this information and synthesize it in much more useful ways, in actionable ways, right? So, one way that I like to look at it, or I like to explain it, I mentioned earlier, maybe a company will focus on a percentage of their employees who are people of color, or a percentage or a number of people, people in leadership who are women or something like that. But the reality is that, number one, diversity is much greater than those three, four, five things that companies tend to focus on, right? So whether it's race, sex, gender, whatever that is, the reality is that diversity also includes immigrants, which I know that you're a huge proponent of. Um, it includes veterans. It includes neurodivergent community. It includes disabled community. It includes working parents. It includes such a huge amount of other sort of categories. So that's the first sort of bucket that I think of, is like there's a ton of different meanings of what diversity is. And then, as you mentioned, there's a lot that you have to do, right? So you have to think about all of these different elements of a journey, and it's a
Yeah.
lot, right? You mentioned, like, it's hard to do all of it probably ever. You could work on this forever and probably never
Right.
do all of
Exactly.
it. So then there's that bucket. And then there's this data bucket, right? Like, we have all of this data. We have data from HRIS systems and from ATS systems. We have data from employee surveys. Hopefully, if you have like a DEI consultant, you have data on DEI specifically. You have all of these kinds of data, right? So that's sort of your third bucket. So when we were in the days when we were focusing more on sort of the outcomes, right? Those numbers, those percentage of people, women in leadership, for instance,
Oh,
it was easier.
we're still in those days. Even though when you are in the space, right, in our little bubble,
Right,
it feels like we're making so
right,
much progress, but the large majority of companies are still doing that. So
right. Yeah, no, you're exactly right. And so what technology is allowing us to do is go from our human ability to use spreadsheets and numbers and whatever for this smaller amount of information, because that's what we were able to do before DEI tech, right? And now with AI and all of these numbers, and we can pull this information from all of these different ways and then synthesize them, like you said, immediately, seamlessly. The computer does it for you. You don't have to be spending your time on these spreadsheets, gathering these numbers. Like, I don't know a single DEI person who's like, I can't wait to work on that spreadsheet. It's not really what we want to be doing, right? Like, we want to be focusing on the people, like the humans in the space. So this technology is allowing us to do that, right? It's giving us way more information to work from. And then it's allowing us way more time to do the parts that we really love.
I really love. Yeah. No, and I think that that's addressing the problem on multiple levels. So for an employee within an organization, for the ERG leaders who are doing work, part of the challenge is you can only pick what you are passionate about. You can only pick so much of what you are doing. And prior to 2020, I think there's an increasing number of companies now trying to start ERGs. It
Right,
used to be that you have to prove to the company that, show them that you need an ERG so they can approve you to start an ERG. Is really
right,
always from the bottoms up, right? So we're seeing a
right,
bit more support from the top. But one of the challenges is that, well, if I'm a Black woman who is an immigrant who also happens to be a parent, I cannot build out all those strategies. I will focus on
right,
the one that I am really in need for, the area that is really important to me that season, right? I will focus on that
right.
one and I will do it. And then I will see progress and I will maybe be happy. But what about all the other employees who fit into all these other buckets? They are
Right,
not seeing you doing anything as an organization and they are still feeling frustrated. So one of the
right.
cool things I really liked about the Matheson demo when you showed me about it is you start with that holistic view of what is going on. And that
Yeah,
gives, even in an organization that doesn't have resources to do much, even in an
right,
organization where there's not a lot of trust,
right,
people begin to see that you are doing something, and
right.
can show you the data that we recognize that there's a problem, and but we can do everything at the same time, and that makes people even feel heard.
Yeah,
You do
absolutely.
things first.
And that's one beautiful example of how you can really start to use this DEI tech to sort of take different pieces and match them together. So, for instance, if a company does an employee survey. And I guess it would be helpful if I told you just a little super high level about the pieces that go into the Matheson platform. And
Yes.
then in that context, the story will make more sense. So actually, our platform gathers information in a few different ways. The first we call the equity index. And what that is designed to do is get the organization's view of where their DEI effort stands. So we ask questions, about 50 questions. We break it down into questions about, pay equity in systems of advancement? Do you have systems of like equitable interview practices, things like that, right? So we're trying to break down all of these different pieces and ask about all of them from the company's perspective. And so what that allows us to do is sort of uncover those gaps that the company is not currently focusing on. The second piece of it is the employee survey piece. So I'm sure most of the people listening have taken employee survey at some point in their careers. Our employee surveys, I think, kind of do four things. Number one, the self-ID data. As I mentioned, our survey and platform in general consider a much more expansive definition of diversity. So we're asking a lot more questions about different statuses, group statuses outside of your traditional, EEOC questions. The second one, of course, is your questions about belonging, which is pretty standard. The third thing that I think is very cool is that we have some parallel questions to the equity index questions, so that you're starting to see, okay, from a company's perspective, this is where we're at. But from the employee's perspective, does that match, right? Does the company say, yes, we absolutely do this thing? And then you ask the employees and they're like, no, we don't do that, or like, we have no knowledge of that. And so you can start to uncover those gaps. And then what we're able to do is take all of that information, sort of match it with the equity index information, and then we're able to give you recommendations, whether you just take the equity index or whether you do both together. We'll be able to give you recommendations of the goals that we think will provide the most value and benefit for your company. So it's not just based on best practices, it's literally the strategy and the journey that is going to be best and most effective and the best ROI for your resources for your company. Right.
And that's a big difference too, because I think we talk about benchmarks and that's needed, right? We need to look at benchmarks. But when you get into the nitty-gritty of benchmarking, it varies by industry, it varies by geographical location, it varies by a lot of things. So being able to look at it in the context of your organization is important.
And so what that allows us to do is a lot of cool things. Oh, and the last thing I'll mention is HRIS integration. So if you have all of this information that already lives in your HRIS system, we're able to pull that information so that we can start to get additional data. For instance, out of if people, 15 people left your company, and then we can start to look at, okay, well, let's match those people to what are their like belonging scores on the employee survey, for instance, right? So you can start to get even more in-depth data. And so a great example of that with ERGs is that if a company says, okay, we want to support our employees, but we're not sure how to do it. And then in the self-ID data, maybe you discover that, you have a fairly large population of employees who identify as neurodivergent. Then all of a sudden you can say, oh, wow, maybe that is an ERG that we need to start, right? Because we need to support this population, or maybe veterans or veteran families or something like that, right? Like, what populations do we have within our company that we haven't historically been supporting that could really actually benefit both from the company perspective and from the employee perspective by starting an ERG? And then you can even take that one step further with the employee survey data, and you can start to see, wow, this population of, single working parents, for instance, we have a lot of these people, and they, more than anyone else in the company, feel like they don't have as much of a sense of belonging, because maybe we do company functions online after work and these people can't participate. So that's why they're not feeling like they belong. So you can start to make these amazing connections, and then you can start to address those challenges.
Exactly. And I think that's a piece of this too for Matheson, right? You will not just pull the data together and provide the context for what's going on. You also give like actionable, like specific recommendations on
Absolutely.
that can be modified, right? It's not like you have to do this. Here are
Right.
some suggestions of things to do. And then you also give like a mapped timeline and a way to measure your progress, right?
Yeah, so what that looks like is after you take the assessments, we will actually give you 15 recommended items, and they're going to be ranked. So the number one item is the thing that we think is going to make the biggest impact if you address it at your organization. Um, like you said, you can absolutely choose which ones you want to focus on. Maybe your company already has an initiative, or there's something that goes hand in hand with something else your company's already doing. Whichever ones you want to choose, that's totally up to you.
Yeah.
But what we do from there is, yes, we provide an action plan with the steps in order to achieve those things. So you'll have a whole action plan laid out in order of the priority. And then in addition to that, we allow you to assign those items to someone who is going to lead and own them. We're we're able to you're able to assign individuals or teams to that item who are going to work on it. You can assign sort of like impact versus how hard it's going to be. So if you say like, this is going to be pretty easy for us to implement and it's going to have a huge impact, great. Like obviously that's one thing that maybe you definitely want to focus on because it's going to be fairly easy and it's going to make a great impact. And then after all of that, absolutely, you can set a goal timeline, and you can sort of keep track of whether you're on track to meet that goal. And we also have a resource library that's going to give you all of the tools and trainings and everything that you need in order to achieve those or to complete those action items to achieve those goals. So
Right.
it's literally everything in one place.
Right. No, thanks. And I know we're getting close to time, just to be respectful of your time. We could talk about this all day, and
All
we're
day.
probably going to have a follow-up conversation. Maybe if there's anything that can be shared, like sharing the screen and showing something, that's a conversation we could also have down the road. Um,
Absolutely.
let's see how much questions we get on there. But hi Robert, hi Kat, hi Leandra. Thanks for joining us. If you have any question, if anyone has any question, drop it in the chat, and then you can also follow up with Erica. But before we wrap up, I did want to address specifically. So for the audience of this call, primarily DEI leaders and ERG leaders, and
Mhm.
maybe some ERG members, some DEI task force, right? Um, we've talked about a lot of ways that these things could really make the work they are doing easier, and
Yeah,
it's not like a magical tool that will solve your DEI problem. I think one thing to clarify is I always say ERGs are not your DEI. They are a part of your DEI. ERGs can be effective if you don't have a clear path as an organization to guide them, and
exactly.
that's part of why there's a lot of like ERG leader burnout and trying to
Right.
solve all the problem for the company. But this is a way to guide the initiatives that the ERGs are focusing on. This is a way to guide which ERGs we should start. This is a way to look at everything holistically. So if
Absolutely.
if anybody wants to, as a call to action now, because it is a lot of information you just shared, it is a tool that I think is better seen and experienced
Yes.
depending on where you are on your DEI journey at your organization. If you are at that stage where you're ready to expand that impact, if you're ready to, it's absolutely normal for companies to start organically. A lot of people start by trying to mold their HRS system
Right.
to bring in DEI data, and try to use spreadsheets or whatever, bring consultants. But if you're at that stage where you are kind of thinking our organization is ready for a tool,
Hmm.
it's still going to be a journey. It's still going to take some time, but you can save time and you can also work on the most pressing DEI issues when you go the DEI tech tool around.
Right.
If anybody wants to kind of explore this more with you, Erica, call to action, what should they do? What's the next step? Thank
Uh,
you,
th-
Karen. Sorry, Karen is saying thank you here. We have people on the chat. Um,
oh, thanks,
Go ahead.
Karen. Yeah, there are a lot of ways. I'm super easy to find on LinkedIn. As you can see, my name is very unique, so I believe I'm the only Erica Robichaux in the entire world who spells their name like this. So you can find me on LinkedIn very, very easily. You can email me directly at erica.robichaux@mathison.io. Um, or you can just go directly to our website, mathison.io, and request more information there. You can make sure to mention this lovely talk and mention Lola if you do. Um, as well as if you go to our website, there are also a lot of cool tools on there that are available for free for download that you can check out. And then we also have events that we host regularly. Generally, about once a month, we'll host open events like the ones that you mentioned earlier. Um, we had a really great one that you can still find the recording for on our website on supercharging your ERGs, which was a fantastic discussion. I still talk about it all the time. And then finally, we also have a community called Gather for DEI professionals who want to come together and talk through problems, share resources. Sometimes it's just hard and you just want to talk to somebody for whatever reason that is. I would love for anyone listening to join our Gather community. And you can also find that on our website, mathison.io.
All right, that's a lot of ways to reach Erica. Okay, so no excuses, but you can also reach out to me. I'll link you directly to her, and I will post all of these links on LinkedIn. If you are watching the replay and you have other questions that come up, feel free to drop it on the post or reach out directly to both of us. Thank you so much, Erica, for being here, and looking forward to having you back because I know we only touched the surface and there's going to be more opportunities to kind of go deeper into Matheson and how it supports DEI.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I always love our conversation. So I'll come back anytime.
Thanks, Erica.